You know, it's just people hear about us and they literally want us to come out to the neighborhood and they show us the land that's been vacant for 40 years and they say, we want to do something with this. So we actually have more land right now than we have money to remediate. And we have leases that we've even acquired by the city through the neighborhood that people are actually kind of waiting for us to get to their plot of land. And part of that is like who you bring to the table. You know, I mean, I have a partner. You know, he's the the CEO of City Fresh Foods. Actually, he's an African American. He's kind of the face in a lot of instances for the project, and I mean, I think that's key is really having people who are of the community at the table with people who are in the community.
So you seem to have a lot of really important interests with HIV prevention and childhood obesity and all of these concerns.
Yeah.
I'm sort of coming from a similar place and sort of figuring out my career, but do you think you have to choose, or can you be effective sort of dabbling, or do you really have to pick one thing and just go for it?
Well, what I realize about myself is that I actually don't dabble. You know, once I end up in a project or something, I put my whole self into it. And, you know, in a lifetime, you can do that a few times, you know. You don't, if you're one of those people, you know, and I've often asked myself, because I have plenty of friends who are like all doing the same thing, you know, like a good friend who's an anthropologist at UMass, and it's like, you're still doing the same thing. I was just like, why can't I just stick with something? And then I realized that there are all these connections to what I'm doing, that I'm actually just kind of sort of almost moving with some kind of movement that's beyond me, you know? And that's how I've trying to make sense of it, you know? And that if you dabble, I'm not sure that you can make the kind of progress that's necessary, but if you just throw yourself into, you know, and it can maintain that focus, then I think you'll be successful. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Plan 3 is on temporary uses of abandoned lots in Midwestern cities.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you could speak to who owns the land that you're farming on, what the lease is like.
Yeah.
And if the owners see you more as a temporary renter, or as are they committed to a long-term vision?
Right. So right now we have. We feel the need to have a lease for at least 5 years just to be able to break even, you know, because of the land remediation piece. The land we are farming on now is city-owned land. The Blue Hill Farm is actually land that was given to a not-for-profit organization in inner city, and they have extra. And there was nothing. It's part of, you know, this big park, and so they said, why don't you just grow on this? You know, so that's basically, this is a private piece of land. We are negotiating a piece of land that's 4.5 acres in Mattapan that 10 years ago the community wanted it to be some kind of urban farm, and they hadn't been able to find somebody to take it over. So that's another piece. So it's all different. It really is all different. Our newest piece of land, which is this one, we went through a community process and had to bid on this piece of land. And the city is actually paying for the remediation. They're paying for the soil and the water, but we're having to do the other, about another $10,000 worth of work to get it up and running. Did I answer all? Yeah. Oh, the length of.
Do they see you as hopefully as a long-term commitment, or are they just looking? Because it doesn't sound like you're renting money besides this site. Do you buy the land? I mean, do you lease the land from the city of Ontario with money, like a lease?
Yeah, $100 a year.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can't afford to lease it for more than that. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the deal. Is it's got to be the free or very, very minimal.
Except for this piece of land was more expensive.
Oh, well, so the lease on this land is $100 a year, but the remediation is more, right? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you would ever consider small scale animal production, like chickens for fresh eggs or rabbits for meat, that sort of thing.
Yes, definitely. I've had backyard chickens for the last 7 years, and I live in JP. There's a movement in Boston to legalize chickens, and it's also part of the rezoning. In there is chickens and other small animals, rabbits and possibly goats. So I'm hoping by next year, when we have a greenhouse, because we just got this mega grant from the state, that we're going to have chickens in the greenhouse heating it for us. So.
A multi-part question. When you talk about remediation, how much new soil do you have to put on to eliminate? Actually, first of all, do you do any testing of the land for any toxins?
We've been back and forth on the testing thing a bunch with the city and also even city residents saying, we should test, we should know what's there, and it's pretty much a given that any urban soil is contaminated. Most of these vacant lots, there was a house standing on it at one point in time, and that house burned down, particularly in the 60s and the 70s. And so there's lead in the soil, there's other contaminants, there have been dumping grounds, all of that. So we don't test. It's a waste of money. We just make the assumption, because it's probably a 90% correct assumption to make, that we need to grow on top, and we put down this semi-permeable geotextile barrier, and then we dump a minimum of 12 inches of mixed soil. So it's for a quarter acre. That's a number of tons of soil. And so that's where the expense comes in.
And are you growing conventionally with synthetic fertilizers and herbicides?
No, not at all. We're organic, but we haven't become certified organic already yet. Yeah.
Where does the soil come from?
We source in a variety of places, actually, depending on the price, and soil is always different. So that they test the soil and show us the test results, and then depending on the test results and the sort of nutrient value of the soil, we and the price point, we source from there.
Have you guys been in touch with Mass NOFA at all regarding their nutrient density program?
I think our farm manager has taken that program, but yeah, we haven't. I mean, we go to the NOFA conference and everything, but we're not like intimately connected with any kind of NOFA program at this point. Yeah.
It'd be a good resource because they have a program.
That's a great idea.
And then they also have a testing system that goes along with the program.
Okay.
For the bricks and nutrient density of each different crop.
Okay.
Kind of like a rubric for assessing the difference between
Great.
your before and your after, and what you get in the grocery store and what you can do organically.
That sounds great. Thank you for that.
Going off this question, I was wondering if you still have to be careful about contaminants coming onto the property after it's already established, whether it's through water, runoff, etc.
Yeah, and we've had to answer these questions to the neighborhood too, so I've done quite a bit of research. What we discovered is that our biggest pollution source is coal-burning power plants in the Midwest that come through the trade winds into Boston. That's also a reason why we have one of the highest asthma rates in the country. It's been linked to that as well. So there actually have been studies done in Boston looking at lead, okay, that's from the air, okay, not from cars, not from buses, we discovered, because actually Boston has the cleanest public school bus fleet in the state of Massachusetts, and almost all our city buses are CSG. So really, it's not runoff from like what's produced by cars, but it's really coming from another place. Yeah, and that's why we do have to replenish the soil almost every year. We have to add a little bit more, mostly compost at that point, just to keep up the nutrient level of the soil, because intensive growing is all about the soil, is 100% about the soil, and also to deal with some drift of lead from the ambient environment.
Is the water clean?
Well, yeah, it's city water, and it comes from Quabbin. It's very clean. It has a tiny, tiny bit of chlorine in it, much less than even a few years ago, which isn't good for growing because it kills organisms. But mostly it's reverse osmosis that they put in over there, so it's pretty good. And on one side, actually, we have groundwater, so that we're going to tap into. So that's even better.
Is there any consideration for doing any aero or hydroponic activity?
Not at this time. Yeah, that's sort of a whole new industry for us. Yeah.
You just briefly mentioned compost. Do you have any sort of connections, like with local restaurants or like people in the community, to get compost?
Yes, I mean, we were just talking about this earlier today, is that City Fresh Foods, who's, well, my business partner is the CEO of City Fresh Foods, and they have 80 employees, and they produce thousands of meals every day, which means there's a lot of food waste there, when you're producing that much meals. So we are starting to, I mean, that's what we're thinking, the way we're going to create our own compost. Our goal eventually is to never have to buy compost, but to create our own, and to use like a City Fresh Food, and to turn their food waste into compost, and then figure out a way to get it to our farm sites. And that transportation piece is still pretty pricey as well. We just got, tons of compost free from this place called Brick House, and it still cost us almost $1,000 to get free compost from outside of Boston, dumped on four of our urban lots.
Last question. So I think your idea is really brave and even crazy.
You're not the first person to say that.
I want to know, where can you get your fertilizer? And if you use the organic method to plant in the city, the fertilizer, if you use the manure, I think maybe they are terrible odor, so the neighbor would have some maybe composed to it. So where do you get your fertilizer? Where do you get your water?
Mm-hmm.
And do you use the CSA model to sell your product?
Yeah, okay. So 3 questions. Where do we get our fertilizer? If you have the right mix of nutrients in soil, you have fertilizer right there. You just keep adding compost. I mean, at least I am not the farmer. I don't know if I told you that. I am not growing I mean, I love to garden, but that's not where my skill set is. So we keep, the farmers figure out, we test the soil, we test even the plant tissue. We figure out what we need to add, and we add it. So does that come from manure? We'd love for it to come from manure. Right now we don't have a source of manure. But with chickens and maybe, I mean, the city does have horses. Maybe we access that at some point. So that's a great idea. And then
your company collect the feces or urine from the residents?
That I think is about a decade away from being in a reality. I mean, I think it'll probably happen eventually, but the public health, codes and regulations around that, I think it's going to take a while. Yeah, I know they do that in Asia, but public health officials get very, very nervous when you talk about that. So.